So hopefully Pavel is here and ready to speak for our final session before what might prove to be an early conference photograph, but maybe that won't be a problem. Or maybe we will have lots of conversation on lift evacuation communications.
Let's see. Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, my name is Pavel Kotek, and I'm coming from the company 2N. So we are the manufacturer of that solution. So we were waiting quite a long time for this code to come up, because working with all what was known on the market until the code is finally published. So it's always a bit of jeopardy in it. So for those, that's the code which reshapes the lift evacuation communication, because it's kind of finally defining it. But it also expands the liabilities and the responsibilities for the stakeholders, because having the system is not enough. You basically also need to know how to operate it. You need to learn or teach the tenants how to use it. And another thing which is important is retrofitting existing lifts, because it's a new standard, so it will be applied to the new elevators. But it's not retrospectively going to be applied to existing elevators where the major issues might be. So that's another topic to maybe think about, whether this shouldn't be at some point mandated for the existing elevators, giving some term until this should happen. And there is still a bit of unclarity on the implementation details. I will get into it. So what I want to do is to provide the overview on the communication. I also would like to compare a bit of the technologies which are available today and what are pros and cons of those. I was mentioning already the importance of the testing and monitoring, as well as the training of the stakeholders. And then what are the compliance points? I mean, what are the kind of key things on that legislation, and maybe show a bit of future directions where this could theoretically go. So it's a communication between the evacuation elevator, car, and the control location, which is kind of already in place, for example, in the EN 8172. But it's also about the evacuation floors and the main evacuation elevator floor. That's what the acronym MEEF stands for. And it should be the central communication hub, receiving the calls from the landings and being able to communicate with the cabin on the other side. So that the needs of the evacuation of the residents are met, and whatever call from landing can be answered on that main floor, and the elevator can be sent there either remotely or with somebody in the cabin driving it, or with somebody in the machine room basically driving that. So this is pretty much the scheme of what I was discussing, because picture is more than 1,000 words usually. So here on that, well, that's your left side, is the, no, it's the right side, sorry, a bit confused, is the communication between the landings and the main elevator evacuation floor. And on the other side, it's your standard elevator shaft with the communication, which is normally there. So you have a cabin unit, you have a machine room phone, and you have additional to this a MEEF piece, which can communicate with both of the endpoints. So what the norm requires. So it's two-way speech between lift car, main elevator evacuation floor, and the landings. There has to be built-in mic and speaker, so no handset, so it has to be a button, built-in speaker, hands-free pretty much. It should be controlled from the main evacuation floor. What is kind of strange, and it kind of complicates things a little bit, is this point. Permanent car to main evacuation floor channel. So you have to have open channel between the place you are managing the evacuation from and the elevator cabin all the time. At the same time, you need to respond to the calls from the landings. So it's kind of strange for me, and there could be probably better ways how this can be solved, but that's what the code is saying in the moment. And the communication has to be the machine room as well as the panel in the cabin. There is actually mentioned the 8172 in the code, that this piece, which was on the previous picture, this what you see here, it's pretty much covered by the 8172, which is the firefighter elevators. So there's the same type of communication which has to have highest priority, communicate between this position, machine room, and the elevator car. So the code kind of enables using that communication. So if it's in the place, then you are fine, and all you need to add is the floors, landings. So I promised I will compare the technology. So basically, pretty much analog technology, standard telephony system, pretty much. It's still simple, it's kind of reliable. But in order to manage all that, it's kind of quite extensive wiring. You would need like a PBX to basically manage all that. So like creating a phone system in the building between the floors and the landing. But it's doable, has been done for many years before. So that's one of the options. The other one is to using digital bus, which is actually the way we are approaching it in the moment, because it minimizes the wiring. Yeah, you have a bus of 2 wires in our case, and you can connect devices onto it. So we have basically 1 wire running through the floors and just connect units onto it. You have to somehow manage the multiplexing. You have to somehow look at the power consumption of the units and how many units you can handle with one system and stuff like that. But it's definitely much less wiring than in the analog system. What's my personal favorite? It's the VoIP and IP world. Because all the buildings today, they have some IP infrastructure, so why not to kind of use the same technology the buildings already have? It is scalable, it's future-proof, and I hope that's where the industry will go at some point. But it's still kind of new for the industry, and for many people it's complex. And but it has other pluses. For example, one of the discussions about the code was adding a video into that. So basically, you will be able to see what's happening on the landing. You will be able to see, okay, is it safe to send the elevator to that landing, or is there already flames somewhere, so you don't want to, or you cannot. So having that video part would be great addition, and it's much easier to do it on the IP technology than the other two. But as I mentioned earlier, it is not only about the system. So you buy the system and install it, but you also have to do regular testing to know that the system is working. So the 8128 for the elevator emergency communication can be used as a guideline. So there is test calls, there is things like that, but there's nothing about testing in that 8176 in the moment. So you have the system, but you are not mandated to test it anyhow. And of course, once you have a system like that, you should somehow incorporate it into the building evacuation plan, so that's kind of part of the whole solution. So how the monitoring can be done? So like on the standard elevator emergency, line monitoring. So you monitor the line, can detect disconnects, and you can basically check all the endpoints pretty much. The other option is heartbeat and ping signals, which would be kind of more used in that IP-based systems, because those systems have another benefit, and that's basically you can monitor them 24/7. You don't have to do any test calls, even manually or automatically, because the system is connected to the network, and you can basically know about the system health every second. And it can also check not only the devices at the end, but also the network, whether that everything works and is fine. And well, other thing is the power monitoring. So every system needs a power. Again, there is no backup or power failure resistance prescribed in the 8176. So if you have an evacuation, it's probably some disaster already happening, so you might not have a power. So you should also think about how this system can be backed up, even though it's not mandated by the system, but there is highly probable that you will have power failure at the same time you need to use it. Well, I just sketched some testing protocol, what should be done, how frequently, and so on, just as an addition. As I mentioned, there's nothing about that in the code in the moment. So testing the voice, well, probably monthly, or I don't know, maybe on every visit of the elevator, can be done either by the building manager or the lift technician when they're on maintenance. Well, self-tests weekly or daily, depending what's available, and I would suggest this to be automated so that you don't have to have people running around and pushing buttons on every floor. The other testing should be like the evacuation drill, because I'll get to that later. The system is only as good as the people who are gonna use it. So having an annual evacuation drill, and that's probably somebody who is responsible for the safety of the building. And then the battery backup, if you have one, then of course it will be wise to test that everything works. Suggestion, always simulate the real conditions. Yeah, so try to get people from the floors, try to communicate with them, check whether the voice is clear, and document the results. Because only from that, the learning can be taken for the future. Training. Yeah, it's as important as the system itself. So you have to be sure that the people know how to use it. They know what to do in the situations. So all the stakeholders must be trained. Of course, not the people who operate the panel. That's probably one or two people in the building, or maybe somebody from the fire department. I don't know who exactly will respond to those emergency and who exactly will be managing this evacuation, but my assumption is it's going to be somebody trained who is responsible for the building. But that's not only those people. You also need to train the people on those landings how to use the intercoms. I mean, they are straightforward, but still, they should know what to do. They should know where to go. And this kind of reminds me that there is another code which is on the building side, which is the area of refuge. Again, this is things which can be probably combined, but there's nothing mentioned in the code that the area of refuge can be the same place where this intercom for the elevator should be placed. Yeah, so we have like codes kind of, well, I wouldn't say colliding, but there might be some synergies if somebody would look at it from like a higher perspective. And yeah, having at least engraved usage instructions for the people to know what to do. So who are the stakeholders? So evacuation coordinators, I mentioned already. Elevator operators, so the people who is basically moving the elevator in terms of those evacuations. So somebody in the cabin, somebody in the machine room, depending how this is organized. Building management, so they know what system they have in their building and know a bit about it, are able to maybe do the trainings, the drills, and the documentation. And of course, the especially vulnerable occupants to know what to do, where to go. And again, as previous, the documentation would be very vital to have, knowing who was trained, the scenarios, the issues they were identified. And then maybe even have some checklists and quizzes to basically see whether the training is serving its purpose, whether the people at the end know what they should do. Training methods, again, so hands-on demonstrations, simulated drills, quick reference guides, somebody coming for the first time to that unit, knowing what to do. So some laminated cards or something like that. And onboarding sessions, so if somebody moves in, just to, I don't know, has any one of you been on the cruise? No? So on the cruise, when you board, you are mandated to do the evacuation drill. So you are shown where to go, you are shown what to take with you, and it's happened for everyone on that cruise. And that's something similar what should happen in the building. So you, as a tenant, should know what to do and what happens. So I was mentioning a couple of standards. So just a recap here. The 8176 is the main I was talking about. It is to some extent linked to the 8128. At least, let's say the battery backup, the testing can be seen as a link towards the 28. And 8172 is the firefighter parallels. I was mentioning that you can use that system for the part of the communication within the shaft. And there is the BS code also, which is the obligations for tall buildings. I would add maybe the area of refuge, but I don't have the code in which this is described, but that's probably some of the literature to go through. So I hope I didn't bore you too much because we are at the end. So it is really critical to understand the process and for all stakeholders to know what is going on. And it goes beyond the lift operation. So I mean, it's not only that somebody installs a system and it's gonna magically work from itself. All those trainings, all those checks, and all that what I was mentioning is really critical. The other critical thing I see is retrofitting the existing elevators, because it's a critical feature, and it will take ages if we just let it for the new elevators. And then for the future, what to think about, maybe trying to think. Kind of being in the shoes of people like that, how they're gonna get out of the building. Just try to think about what's going to happen. Of course, there is building management software integrations. This can be integrated into, and many other things. So some next step suggestions. Oh, sorry. Assessing the retrofit feasibility of the building. Maybe developing some training methodology so that people don't have to build everything from scratch. The psychology aspect, so study the behavioral aspects of the whole thing. So whether the way it is designed in the moment suits the purpose the best, how people react on this. But it will be shown when the drills are going to be made, and those trainings, the people respond and say, oh, well, it's not clear, or this would be better, and stuff like that. And the integration in the building management systems. You have your cameras, you have your ACs, everything in the building, overseen, access control from the building management software. So having that evacuation somehow part of it would also be beneficial. A bit about me. Well, I'm in that business for about 13 years now, so having some knowledge over there, but I'm mainly a salesperson, even though I really like to be deep into the technology and knowing what this is all about. Questions?
Pavel. Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions from the floor?
When you consider retrofitting this, what kind of wiring do you need? Is a simple two-wire solution available for this system that you have?
Yes, exactly. What we have selected from those options I was mentioning is the digital bus. So we have a two-wire digital bus in our product. So basically running it through the floors and connecting the landing intercoms. We have the boxes to fit into the walls, so with the mounting installation equipment and all that, so it can be nice and neat flush mount. And then you just need to add a device somewhere where the firefighter intercom today is, or the main landing, or however we're gonna call it, which is actually using the IP technology. So from the kind of brain of the system, we need like a Cat5 connection, because we decided to use an IP phone because it gives you more in terms of visualizing what is there, and theoretically for the future, it could theoretically also show you the video from the landing. So that's kind of our approach. We have like a low-cost version where you have just an audio unit which connects over two wires. So if you want to have all two-wire, then it's possible.
Thank you. A question from the back, and then I'll come to you, Jason.
Yes, Tijmen Molenma, Lift Institute. Thank you for your presentation. So since this whole communication is so vital for the safety of the building, do you think that this should become a safety function, this communication, and it becomes a safety system, or currently in code it's just a regular function? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think I was stressing enough that retrofitting existing building is vital. So I really see it as a safety. But you know, there is this slight edge between the area of refuge where you go if there is a disaster, so you can hide and so on, which is already in the code. But I don't know how exactly this is kind of driven and mandated. Maybe somebody from more knowledge about the building. So, it's definitely not in all the buildings, right? The area of refuge places. So, and it also depends on the tenants, but you know, people with disabilities or not being able to move that well are pretty much in every building. So I wouldn't say it is just for residential, or this is just for hospitals, or this is just for whatever. So the answer is, I really think it's a vital system for preventing situations like you know, the big tragedies happening here in UK. Maybe one note on this. I was just riding on the train towards here, and one of the train stations, they have an elevator. On one side of the elevator was a sign of evacuation elevator with a wheelchair. On the other side of the elevator was, do not use the elevator in terms of fire. And you will see this, I mean, not using elevator in all of the, that's common to all of us, right? We all know it's every elevator, but how this corresponds with the evacuation. So that's also things which kind of need to be sorted out. But to answer your question, I really think it should be a safety feature.
Right, bit of a change of culture using lifts in an emergency. Jason.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you may not be able to answer this one, but maybe it's a practical one for everyone. The height at which the landing intercoms should be mounted and their location, I can imagine if you put it adjacent to the call button, then people will be pressing that as much as they are pressing the call button without reading maybe what's been inscribed on it. So I'm not suggesting you maybe have the answer to that, may have an opinion on that. The other thing is just a shameless plug for CEDES. We're a global distributor for 2N, and we do have their solution. Don't mind.
Thanks, Jason. No, I would probably put that intercom into the eyesight, because I mean you have a speaker and mic at that position, so it will definitely, you know, be different from the call button, which is much lower. So having it on the like an eyesight level would kind of make sense. But again,
I think there are not some strong references to Part 70 in Part 76. I think it references Part 70, the accessibility standard, which of course tells you where to put a lot of these fixtures, so that people can get them and see them and Yeah.
Yeah, the comment about the wheelchair is a vital one. So, well, you have two intercoms there. No, I mean, again, so maybe going back to the training, like then people know what this button is for and what this button is for. So.
Yeah. Graham.
Hi, Graham Barker from Cundall. So I think you raise a really interesting and important point about the maintenance of the system after it's been installed and the need to be able to regularly test it. When we've got voice stations at every landing that communicate to the main kind of control station, in my head that needs two people to test it, one at the control station and one at each of the remote stations in turn. But is there a technological way that we can solve that? Because most buildings don't have two building managers to do that testing.
Well, there is an option definitely to use kind of what we have in the 8128 code, which basically mandates like those 3-day test calls, which are initiated automatically from those units. So that would be one option. Or you might want to do it the other way around, calling the station from the main point, because by that you will prove the communication is working. You probably won't be able to prove that the button is working, but you will know the communication is working because you will reach the destination. Well, having a real-time test, as I mentioned, with two people would definitely probably be the best option, but there are some other ways how to do it.
One further question, Phil. I think you had a question.
Philip Hoffer from Schindler here. Yeah, we just had a recent earthquake in Thailand, in Bangkok, and there was actually 40 lifts that were trapped without the travelling cable. So, I think the wired solution has its limitations. I think Bangkok is not even the seismic zone, right? So the communication was definitely an issue when you lose your travelling cable. So just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, if you lose the traveling cable, the question is whether you can, because I mean you can communicate with the machine room, but if you don't have a traveling cable, then you probably cannot move the cabin, or maybe you can, because if you don't use the ability to move it, then you can do it. You won't be able to inform the people in the cabin, because this is not about people in the cabin mainly. Yeah, the cabin is here to basically pick up people from the landings and evacuate them safely. Yeah, for communication from the cabin to that's the 8128. And well, if you lose the traveling cable, I'm personally not a friend of wireless options because the shaft is not very friendly environment for signals like that. So I mean that could be the option. There is a cellular options, but again, as a recommendation as manufacturer is not to put the cellular on the car top because it keeps on moving. You might lose the signal anyway. Well, I don't have an easy answer to that.
Options to debate. Any further questions? We still have a little bit of time. Lutfi?
You mentioned one of the options was the digital bus, and you said that that's the preferred option. I have two questions. Is that an industrial standard digital bus, or is it your own sort of system? And can you mix that with the digital bus for the lift control system?
Well, we never used that method that we will be using the same wires for two systems. It probably could be done, but I'm not 100% sure because the bus is using also for powering the devices, so the the different power requirements might be an issue. And in this case, it's our proprietary bus. There is no like industry standard bus for the emergency communication.
One final question from the floor, Len.
Just one quick point. One of the points in 76 is that if the evacuation service is suspended, then you have to have a means of communicating that to the people on the landings, who may still be waiting. So would you envisage the features having some form of indication as to whether the service is active or not?
Well, we solved that differently. We are able to basically broadcast to all the units. So I can send a message, the evacuation is suspended, and it will be played on all the units. Yeah, so that's kind of our approach, how to do it.
Just a closing comment from myself. For those of you that may not have been with us yesterday when we were doing the Guide D launch, we did touch on the fact that one of many standards that's undergoing revision at the moment is BS 8899, which many of you will be familiar with, deals with the improvement of lifts for the fire service, so old firemen's, firefighting, and even firefighters' lifts. But part of that scope is obviously including the implications of Part 76 on existing lifts. A challenge, but I think it's a real focus because, as you point out quite correctly, there's many more existing lifts than there are new lifts. Anyway, thank you, Pavel. Very, very good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.